Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very, very, very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight on my revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers, here's one of the few voices of sanity in an online media environment dripping with corporate right-wing bias. He is a multimedia Shakespearean jester speaking truth to power. He is the editor of independent news site scoop.co.nz, the ever-brilliant Selwyn Manning. No point pointing at him. And he is the only man in New Zealand who hasn't watched Star Wars because the Rebel Alliance are far too left-wing. He will inherit the Murray McCully human skin suit when whatever reptilian thing currently inhabiting Murray McCully finally dies. Far-right storm blogger Cameron Slater, welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, issue 1, the Māori Party's appalling bedside manner on suicide and the Child Poverty Action Group's plan to feed children in poverty. Are those on the bottom needing help getting that help? Issue 2, Mr. Key visits Washington and all he brought us back was the lousy Marines. Issue 3 tonight, is the Rugby World Cup going to be an economic fizzer for Auckland? And we'll end the show on a final word, but let's kick things off with issue 1. Māori Party MP Mr. Flavel has suggested that we bury suicide victims in a separate cemetery in order to dishonour them in death so as to shame youth into not committing suicide, while Child Poverty Action Group have noted 221,000 children in poverty and 83,000 going to school hungry, and has suggested the cost to feed the lowest decile schools would be as paltry as $20 million per year. Are those on the bottom who need help getting that help? Selwyn, Flavel's comments on suicide are made so much more offensive because it's the policies his government are implementing that are exacerbating the hopelessness that drives suicide. I put to you, in 92, we had over 20% youth unemployment, and alongside the mother of all budget welfare cutbacks, saw the youth suicide rate triple to the shameful OECD highs they are today. Other than wasting millions on boot camps that don't work, what is this government doing for young New Zealanders?
Well, it's not doing enough, clearly, and I just reflect back to the national-led coalition with New Zealand First in 1996. They inherited that the coalition, first under MMP, inherited a problem of youth suicide, like you've alluded to there. We saw a priority being given to that through its Minister for Youth Affairs, Deborah Morris. Now, how many people out there actually know who the Youth Affairs Minister is? You know, transparent, never see any action on this type of thing. And the fact of the matter is it needs to be addressed, it needs to be highlighted, and it needs a dialogue actually sparked in this country that will drive a policy that will actually be pragmatic and work for these people.
Yeah. Cam, the Green Paper released by your good friend Paula Bennett this week is a sick joke masquerading as social policy, isn't it? Paula knows what the issues of poverty are. Child Poverty Action Group have pointed them out. Hungry kids in classrooms don't learn, do they? And this Green Paper is merely a smokescreen to make it look like the government's doing something, isn't it?
Well, I would have thought after 9 years of Labour and 3 years of not much more right-wing than Labour was, national government, we would have had all of this addressed with the vast quantities of money that have been chucked into poverty. The simple fact is that traditional solutions for solving youth hunger or whatever, all of this mumbo-jumbo just comes down to the fact that people think it's the government's responsibility to feed their children when it's their bloody responsibility to feed their children. And as for suicide, the country's completely missing the mark. We refuse to talk about it. We've got archaic coronial laws that prevent the press saying this fool jumped off a bridge and killed himself.
Well, we don't necessarily want to say fool, do we? Do you want to dishonour the dead?
Look, I've had two good friends who have killed themselves.
Yep. And you wouldn't want to dishonour them, would you?
Well, I've got very little time for them. It's just a completely selfish act on their part, having a permanent solution to a temporary problem that they were facing at that point in time. You know, but money is not going to solve that issue.
But
Selwyn, the Shire Volk of New Zealand that dear Cameron represents have been loud and screaming, it's all the parents' fault, it's not the responsibility of the state to feed children.
It isn't.
That exact same tone. But doesn't that mentality ignore our 5% inflation rate, ignore the doubling of food parcels for the poor, ignore that our minimum wage is a joke, and ignore the fact benefits are set 20% below minimum adult nutritional requirements so as to keep beneficiaries hungry?
That argument does polarise the situation to a point where it excludes all of those contributors that you're talking about, but it is not an exclusive cause of this.
No.
I mean, we see that right across the socio-economic spectrum in communities that are wealthy, King's College college, for goodness sake, having people that are actually killing themselves. So it breaks down those barriers of poverty. We do know, though, that those who, for whatever reason, feel that they are not engaged with everybody else, have a problem in the sense that they are not identifying with others that perhaps can help them through some pretty dark times. I would suggest a Flavel, because this whole thing came from Flavel's thing. Have a look at what Deborah Morris and New Zealand First were actually talking about in 96 through to 1999. There was some work there that gives an indication of policy development. Unfortunately, it had not been kept on, in a sense, and that is a shame here. And I only say that even if the policy is to actually get out there into the communities, into the regions, talking about this type of thing like Cam
Openly
said,
and honestly.
then that is a decent policy. You know,
Cam,
they've got to do it.
I put to you that the National Party actually have no interest in reducing poverty in New Zealand because poverty makes
Neither
for a
do Labour.
cheaper, more exploitable workforce, which in turn benefits their employer voting base. All this government have to offer is an economic Darwinism, don't they? Survival of the top tax
But
bracket.
no government has got any solution for poverty, because if they did have a solution for poverty, we would have solved it a long time ago.
Yeah, but
And
I
there's
can tell you
no-
what, the
that's a
trickle
little-
down theory just
Yeah,
does
that's
not
right,
work.
exactly.
And
That's
so
the
there is
point,
an
that's the
element of
problem.
the
But
government
you-
having a responsibility
but
to do
people
something
like
about
Bomber
it.
banging on about it.
A failed economy always excludes carrying those that can actually progress
But
through their
if
lives to make
Labour
a
is the
contribution.
answer, it was a
Right.
stupid question, because they did nothing about it for 9 years.
Well, they
and you
did
know
some
that,
things,
Martin.
but it's not
They did, that's right,
adequate.
that's right, but wasn't
you know.
enough, that's
It
right.
wasn't enough. I mean, those of us
Money,
who
if
live
money
in...
was the answer, it would have solved the problem
No,
a long
but it's
time
also
ago.
as a policy that was being actually excluded from the old
Welfarism is
solution-based
what's
there.
causing the problem.
Hold on, we didn't give for that 9 years those beneficiaries on the bottom any of the tax credits. You talk about all this money that was thrown
They
around.
don't pay tax.
That wasn't given.
They don't pay tax.
Everyone.
One
They're
of the
net
cringe-
tax
everyone.
one
takers,
of the,
not net
one of the
taxpayers.
cringing things that lived on with the Labour-led government under Helen Clark was this thing that families who are progressing will be getting assistance, and it excluded those that haven't actually made that actually
And they
transition
excluded
to
them.
being
That's
able
right,
to
And,
that's right.
aspire
and
to their
cynically, they
potential.
excluded them for one reason. They knew that those people always vote Labour, so we don't need
Well,
to help
they
them.
didn't do anything because they were terrified of rednecks like you jumping up and
Oh,
down
rubbish.
doing the
But
same dance.
Helen
saying,
Clark
blah,
terrified
blah,
of me?
blah.
But,
No, no, 'cause
but
she needed to manage
politically,
rednecks.
and it
That was
doesn't
the
matter
problem.
where you are on the spectrum, the whole problem of those that were in the lowest end were unrepresented in the parliament.
That's right.
Still
that's
are.
And
right,
it
that's right,
still are,
that's right.
and that's the problem.
That's
With the
why they-
demise of the alliance,
Yep.
Labour did not move into that ground to
That's why
represent
they
them.
need mana. Question of both
With
of
all of
you:
Matt McCartan's tax money.
how can demonising youth who commit suicide by burying them in separate cemeteries do anything other than dishonour all of us?
It doesn't. It doesn't. We need to talk about suicide using real words and real terms, and stop the mealy-mouthed, mamby-pamby,
Well,
cover it up.
do you think John Kirwan's mealy mouth? Do you think
Yes,
that
I
attempt?
do. I think
No,
he's
but
too
Cam's
soft.
talking about media constraint. We
Yeah.
cannot write about these things in an open
Look,
kind of way.
my mate stabbed himself in the heart 5 times with a bread knife, and the media reported it as a sudden tragic death. Right? They should have reported what he did, because people, when you hear the details of what he did, you are just shocked that someone could be so despondent that they'll stab themselves in the heart 5 times. But by calling it a sudden tragic death and then holding a
Yeah.
public funeral
Over
and
the
lauding
top,
the guy as a great big hero, when
Both of you.
but-
yeah, research this week showed that 50% of children dying with the hands of white New Zealanders, yet the myopic focus of the media is always on Māori. How much of a role does the casual racism of ratings-driven media have to play in bigotry over reason when it comes to social welfare? We're hearing these same sort of myopic arguments coming back.
Well, I think you have to look at the mainstream media's newsrooms to actually get an idea of why this happens. You know, the affiliations to particular ethnic groups that they represent is not actually getting to this, and it's using scapegoatism and stigmatism and also stigmatism, is that the right word?
But given
But
pure
also
demographics, you'd
stereotyping.
expect those numbers to be correct. That
You know,
50% of
but even
child
in-
deaths
yeah.
are committed by Pākehā. You'd expect that from demographics. What is appalling, and this is what even you're trying to say, well, we shouldn't talk about it, But what is
I'm not
appalling
saying that at
is
all.
that for a population that's represented by about 10 to 11% of the population, they are overrepresented in every bad statistic that there is in New Zealand.
So
and
when
smoking,
Dr.
and prison,
Brash
and
says
killing
that they've got
kids.
all
yet, Cam,
when Dr.
my
Brash says
my
they've got all
argument
these
is
things.
my argument is that everybody in this country has the potential to
They do.
should have the ability to reach their potential.
Yes.
And everybody starts off pretty much, in a
We all go to
situation where
school.
they can perhaps actually reach there. At some stage, that all falls down, and that's where we as a country need to actually
But the government's
identify
not gonna
those
fix it.
causes. The government's not going to
They'll
fix it.
never
but
fix it.
$20
boy,
million
it's got a
to
big
feed
part
all
to
those
play.
kids. That doesn't sound like too much. Who wins, who loses by using the stick rather than the carrot as social policy? Because this is all stick.
If it's all Flavel stick, everyone loses. That guy wants to actually switch on to Radio Live and look at the Nutters program on there. That,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, Mike King
would
and
s-
co.
yeah,
Well, I'll
Mike
have a
King
chat
would
with
do
him
And it's
that.
all about
depression.
talking,
Yeah.
eh?
Yeah.
You know, and that's
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
Yeah, your thoughts?
You know,
And that's
I
not
just
soft.
don't believe that money's the answer, and you blithely chuck, 20 million's the solution.
Yeah, that's right.
The thing is Martin, is that if you keep on getting the state to feed other people's children, they'll keep on letting the state feed their children. And it comes down...
How Charles Dickens of you. Issue 2. Mr. Key visits Washington and all he brought us back was the lousy Marines.
Hoorah.
Selwyn, let's start with John Key's extraordinarily stupid comment where he attempted to connect New Zealand's involvement in Afghanistan with the massacre in Norway. Was he big noting before the world's media, or was he just brain farting before he had the actual facts again?
Oh, absolutely the latter. I mean, the biggest problem we have as a media observing and analysing John Key as our Prime Minister is exactly these types of things where he runs off at the mouth before he knows the facts. Or if he doesn't know the facts and someone presents an alternative viewpoint to what he's saying, he then creates a situation where they're supposed to be not credible. This type of stuff is really, really exposing us as a laughing kind of
Oh,
stock.
what a load
you
of
get,
bollocks.
No, you get the Prime
No, it
Minister
is.
offshore, he's in a foreign affairs environment.
Yep.
He looks like a fool when he
Look,
does
you
that
guys,
type of
you
thing.
guys would damn him if he didn't, damn if he didn't.
Look-
If he didn't know enough and he said,
Look,
look,
Cam,
I don't know,
Cam.
we had, no, hang on a second.
Let-
If he said that I'm sorry, I haven't been briefed on that, then you guys would say, why wasn't he? He should be briefed, he's got all of that. And you
Let's
just go
stack the
nuts
Prime
on that.
Ministers of this country up. John Key, Helen Clark, going back all the way back to Longy, going back to Muldoon, going back to, Holyoake. Where does John Key fit into that on the we are proud of our Prime Minister when they're offshore type
Oh,
of
that's some
equation?
sort of,
Cam,
lame
as a-
pinko.
He's even worse than Jenny
Cam,
Shipley
as
was.
a right-wing Christian gun nut with a history of depression, who also doesn't like the Labour Party, do you think John Key's attempt to connect the two events was opportunistic?
Look, and I really resent the implication you've made in stringing all of that together and trying to brand me as some sort of psychopath that's going to go out and kill people. I respect human life, and I get really offended when people try and link my depression with wanting to go out and kill people. I didn't even want to kill myself, so why would I want to go and kill other people?
So
know?
you think
So I
John Key
actually-
was opportunistic?
No, I don't think at all. You guys have taken John Key's statement made immediately after Obama's statement, when not even Obama knew the details.
That's right.
Right, the guy who commands probably the world's most prolific.
And yet John Key thought he did know the details.
No, he didn't. He said
He-
if this is, there had been reports.
No, he was
that the-
relying on the New York Times. He
Right.
wasn't relying on his own official
Whatever.
briefings on this.
The point is that there was a thought that there was an element of international terrorism involved in this because there'd been claims by jihadist groups that they were involved. And subsequently,
But they
we found-
make those claims a lot.
But
don't
you know,
they?
the
No, but they do, but you
but
know-
the biggest thing that came out of this was John Key was so off beam. It doesn't matter where he got his information from, and it wasn't official. The fact of
You
the matter
can't-
was, it was an
you
enemy
can't
within
take
type
his-
equation. It wasn't one that they
Yes,
can
but
label.
but not
from
even
a race
Obama
or
knew that.
ethnicity.
You can't.
That's right, and
You
yet he
can't take
pretended
John
to.
Key. You
But
can't
at
take
least
John
he
Key's.
waited to find
No,
out.
he didn't. You
Yeah.
can't take John Key's statement in isolation from Obama's. The one follows the other, and you guys have jumped on that mercilessly to do, and Phil Goff
And
stupidly
rightfully
jumped
so.
in as well.
You'd have to
Rightfully
say.
so.
No,
Selwyn,
exactly.
WikiLeaks showed us how involved the US Embassy was in trying to push their interests in the New Zealand media to convince us to dump Pharmac for US corporate interests. If we are so compliant when it comes to sending SAS to enable torture in American wars, won't this government fold over Pharmac?
Pharmac's nothing for this government to actually allow to go through. I mean, the interests from the United States and the TPP, you're talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. I mean, that is one of the biggest concerns, where this government's not going to roll over on that, roll on top of that one. It's going to allow it to occur. You know, the momentum is what indicates all of that. I mean, the country, by and large, has fully supported the National Party and its predecessor, the Labor government, on its pursuit of free trade, to the point where it, you know, in 1999,
to us, right?
you know, sorry, but in 1999 at APEC, it was first announced, and I think I was the first to actually announce it, that there was a deal that had formed between New Zealand, Chile, and Singapore, a kind of free trade type of thing in its burgeoning state. It was denied by Jenny Shipley's government at that time, but within a month we knew that that was the case. It's emerged now into a TPP. The momentum is going to work around the things, but yes, Pharmac and having stuff dumped, pharmaceuticals dumped onto New Zealand shores is going to happen. Whether or not people care enough about that is another thing.
Cam, WikiLeaks show that our negotiators have privately told the US negotiators that New Zealand gets very little out of the free trade deal, and managing public perception would be the most important and difficult part. Hence John Key's ridiculous claim of the deal being worth billions and billions to New Zealand. What do we gain by agreeing to be taken to foreign tribunals by US corporations where the New Zealand government doesn't have any power? What do we gain as a country?
Hang on a second. We took Australia to an international tribunal and won.
That was WTO. That was under WTO.
But it's an international tribunal.
Well, no, but the WTO is very different from these tribunals that they want to create.
What makes you think that we won't get anywhere with them?
But because it opens our government up for the US corporations to take us to
WikiLeaks showed us a lot of things. It showed us Phil Goff lied about the gone by lunchtime comment. It showed us that Trevor Mallard made up the American bagman thing. How come you don't focus on those?
Also showed us that there was a snout inside the defence.
Exactly.
So are you denying
that was a spy that New Zealand and the national-led government at the moment has never actually tried to find out who it was?
So you're denying the foreign tribunals are a problem for our economic sovereignty?
Well, I don't.
Because they're binding decisions. That's why the WTO ones aren't binding, Cam.
Well, then what's the point of it then if it's not binding? I mean,
because everyone agrees to work within the WTO framework. It's completely different from this one.
And that's what happens. Australia then sits there and says, "Oh, well, we don't agree with the WTO."
Well, the Australians have put forward an argument saying they don't want to be held by these tribunals either. Why aren't we supporting that position?
Well, I think we should be. I think if you have tribunals and they make decisions, they should be binding. Otherwise, what's the point of having them?
That's like having the problem for the Australians is that it's going to allow those tobacco companies to come and sue them. That's the problem for them.
Why can't tobacco companies advertise their products? They're taxed.
Okay,
they pay taxes. Why can't they advertise their products?
Question to both of you. Aren't we agreeing to the Marines and the Coast Guards coming so as to give America the symbolism of marking their turf against China? Aren't there much
you
bigger
got it
games
right on the button. I was wondering if you're going to go there. This is a regional play.
Yeah.
New Zealand is the meat in the sandwich here. We talked about this on a previous program, I think.
Yeah.
China's interest with New Zealand is well tracked. You know, a free trade agreement with China. America is coming through. It's very, very vulnerable in the Pacific. It's put a lot of its naval hardware into the Pacific.
Fiji.
Transferred across. At the same time, diplomatically, China has been very savvy
came here last year
picking
from China.
Up pretty much Melanesia is China's now. You know, right from Papua New Guinea right across to Fiji.
And that's because
and the United States, having the Marines down here in New Zealand, is sending a signal. We've got this Eurocentric outcrop here, and we're going to control this. You may have relationships, but
this is about political spheres, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But China's influence in the Pacific is huge, and we sit here and wag our fingers at these small Pacific nations and try and get them to do things our way through bullying and
at the same
lecturing,
time,
and at the same time, the Chinese don't care.
We're timid about the Chinese in the sense that when they're down here, we put buses to block the leader from being able to see protests. We exclude, you know, people who may ask a difficult question from being able to get access.
The Chinese don't care what form of government their client states have. They simply don't. It's just about influence and power. But we care, and as a result, we're not there. Right?
We're mishandling Fiji, aren't we?
Hugely mishandling Fiji. We have bombed it spectacularly. Helen Clark, out of pure spite and vitriol, bombed that. And Murray McCully carried it on. And for the life of me, but Fiji is easy to be solved.
Yep.
Absolutely
Send Winston
easy.
over there with a couple of bottles of
It wouldn't
whiskey.
cost a lot of money. All it requires is some time, some effort, and some expertise, and we can help them get back towards democracy. But while we sit and wag the finger and refuse to talk
They'll
to
be
them,
under China's influence?
they'll be under China's influence who don't really
couldn't
don't
agree
care.
more,
Who
Cam.
They
don't care,
just
do
don't care,
They
and they'll
don't.
just say, "Oh, do you need the King's Road redone? That's all right. We'll relay the King's Road for you. Don't worry about
But
that."
the fact of the matter is it's really a done deal now.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. We
Oh,
missed
yeah, in terms of
We-
China's influence in Fiji?
Oh, absolutely.
By putting a
Yeah.
ring fence around Fiji and saying, "Hey, you can't travel to here,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
can't do this, and you can't do that," we forced them
Yeah.
to go to China.
And everybody that watches this program is going to be able, that has been to Fiji recently will say, absolutely,
Really?
that has changed,
Really?
particularly if they've been there prior to.
Most people who go to Fiji just wonder what the fuss is in the media here. Honestly,
Thank
really.
you, panel. Moving on with issue 3 tonight. Is the Rugby World Cup going to be an economic fizzer for Auckland? Selwyn, this matters, doesn't it? Because Treasury held up 2 events for economic growth this year, the Christchurch rebuild and the Rugby World Cup. The Christchurch rebuild isn't going to happen this side of December, leaving the Rugby World
Not
Cup.
with Jerry Brownlee in charge.
Can the economy really survive on the supposed World Cup boom?
No,
Can it?
I think the whole thing has been mismanaged right from the start. I don't believe it can, to answer your question directly.
Yeah.
And there's some things too that you imagine if you were over the other side of the world, you purchase some tickets for Eden Park to watch games at Rugby World Cup, and you think, yeah, I'm getting into a really flash stadium here.
No one
Honestly,
thinks that.
look at it from
No
look
one
at it from
thinks that when they
Sandringham
buy
Road.
tickets.
You've got scaffolding that
Yeah.
goes up about 50 feet, about 30 metres
But
or
no
something,
one-
and then people are being perched
But
up the
no
top
one
of that.
buys tickets
They're
thinking they're going to
paying
be
for that.
sitting in a flash
No
stadium.
wonder the
But-
ticket sales have dropped off. If anyone's
Yeah,
been taking photos and sending them to their mates overseas saying, this is where you're going to be sitting,
You
they'll be
guys, are,
saying,
you
no
guys
way.
are like Helen Clark's haters and wreckers on anything New Zealand does, don't you?
But do you think
No,
that our
talking
stadiums
facts and
match
realities,
stadiums in overseas countries?
It's just a simple factor of money. See, what happens is people say, let's build a stadium, then you jump up and down and go, oh, this is a waste of money.
No,
so
what
now
you're
we're
doing,
left
you're
with
protecting
scaffolding.
all of those
No, I'm
cushy,
not. I don't care.
cushy sods that have locked up Eden Park despite all of that public money going into it, where they don't open it up to inter-school
Yeah, that's
championships,
right, that's right,
they don't
that's right,
open it
that's
up
right,
to
that's right.
The Hello
training
too.
or
Right,
that's
fitness programs, they lock it up for the elite to go and pay for
I want
tickets.
to.
for
What
them
I
watch
want to
the
know is
Boxing
where's
game.
the indoor training facilities for skeet shooting in Auckland?
Eden Park, Cam,
Well, if you
dropped.
talk to your mates, maybe they'll open up
that's right.
a scene. in there.
Eden Park dropped the second story of their exclusive VIP rooms due to lack of demand. Last week, a company set up to facilitate rich overseas visitors renting exclusive properties fell over due to a lack of demand from wealthy tourists. And this week, just a couple of days ago, new cheap tickets were released after they didn't sell with tour group operators. The market is signalling some pretty ugly numbers, aren't they?
No, I think the market is signalling stop being scalping rapacious bastards
Yeah.
is what they're signalling, not that people aren't interested.
But if the top clientele, the very, very uber wealthy, just aren't turning up, isn't that where they make up most of their
but
profit?
you'd
in
be
these
happy
things?
about the uber wealthy not turning up because you wouldn't want them here, would you?
Regardless of that, I'm talking about the economic well-being of the country. No one's turning up, man.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that no one's turning up, man, because you say so. I mean, you refer to,
You don't
to
think the
facts
double-
and
you
figures
don't think
about
the double-
polls that
you
you
don't
can't
think-
prove.
you don't
Well,
think
let's
the
talk
double
about
stories.
source information then. You've got Martin Snedden admitting that there is a downturn in the amount of sales. They're well down on what they had anticipated.
Well, that's right.
That means that the demand isn't there,
Well,
doesn't it? You know,
well, what it means is that
it's a simple equation. The
well,
demand's
the
not
simple
there.
Why are you
equation is
defending the
over
Rugby World
anticipated.
Cup? Why are you
not-
dying in a ditch over this?
You asked me questions. I
well, that's-
don't care.
It's failing, though. It's not working.
I haven't watched a game of rugby in 5 years. I don't care.
Question to both
Look,
of you.
I hope
Seeing
it fails
as-
because then
see-
Murray
There
McCully
you
will get
go, yeah.
stabbed.
There you
So
go.
there you
So
go.
anything that gets Murray McCully
He's
stabbed
stabbed.
is completely positive. Both of you, seeing as no one seems to want the cloud tent the second the Rugby World Cup is over, will the 10 million spent on this poorly thought out temporary structure ever be recouped? Are we ever going to get the
God,
money
no.
back from that?
I mean, the thing's an embarrassment. I mean, you're going to lose on tourism credibility for a start. But, as soon as that helicopter starts showing shots of the Sandringham Road end and the other end opposite it, where the terraces used to be, the people overseas will say, what on earth is that? Really,
It'll be too late,
that-
though.
Are we getting any? Are we going to get
There's
any
no
money back on the
investment.
cloud tent?
Look, I'm just hoping that I can be able to pin the cloud tent on Len Brown.
I think it's a bit late for that. I mean, these are retrospective decisions.
Well, that's what you're hoping for.
Look-
I got something to smack up Len Brown with. Okay, question to both of you. Are the media ignoring the signs of this being a fizzer because they've got so much invested in the hoopla?
Oh, many of
They're very
the
uncritical, aren't
MSM
they?
or the mainstream media are,
Very
you know,
uncritical.
they're right in there hoping to get some free tickets
Right.
in this.
Yeah, I haven't
in
got
the
my
trough,
free tickets
left, right,
yet.
and centre. The fact that, you know, really, this thing is a lemon. You know, it's going to have a lot of people here, but what signals are we sending out? Eden Park is supposed to be the jewel in this whole game.
And so what
thing.
were we going to do?
And it's a joke.
What were we gonna do?
It looks like a
What do you
it
suggest?
looks like a
What do you
hydroponics
suggest?
hothouse tomato
What do you
kind
suggest?
of thing. You know,
What do you
with this
suggest?
plastic around the outside. Oh,
It's a
Jade
little bit
Stadium?
late in the day
look,
now, isn't
it's
it?
a bit late in the day.
What
We
if
were
we-
suggesting solutions 3 years
Well,
ago. You know?
one of
Do you
those was
think-
Jade Stadium.
Do you think when tourists
wasn't
who
one
are
of my
used
solutions.
to actual public transport centres and actual public transport from Europe, when they come here, are going to be shocked by what we've got?
Oh yeah, can you imagine all those thousands waiting at the train station at Kingsland to get there?
I am actually imagining that. Final question: Is the Rugby World Cup going to be a fizzer, or is it going to pay off?
Well, I'd be a bit of a fool if I said it was going to pay off after all that spouting off I just did, but no, I think it's a bit
Free
of a
Rugby
fizzer.
World Cup.
I'm
tickets,
looking
when are they
for.
going to give away free Rugby World Cup?
Well,
tickets?
hopefully
When?
they give it to the kids in the first
Yep.
15s of the
Yep.
schools around the country.
Free
you
Rugby
know?
World Cup tickets. When is it going to happen?
Tickets aren't where all the revenue is about for the Rugby World Cup. I still think it's going to be a fizzer, and there's a whole lot of reasons behind that. Notwithstanding the huge global downturn and the
Yeah,
shortage
that's
of money
right,
around
that's
the place, but short of shutting up shop and saying, nah, we're not going to have it anymore, well, I think we've just got to suck it and see. I still think there'll be a large influx of tourists that'll come for this, and the money that they spend in hotels and restaurants and bars and those sorts of
The
things.
price gouging. It'll pay off.
It'll pay off for
some.
and locally and for some, and those who are
And
sharp.
for others that have opened new businesses that cannot actually open at a time where these people want to socialise, it's not going to be a win for them at all.
Okay, let's wrap the show with last word. Selwyn, your last word this week.
Well,
is?
my last word is actually linked to this issue of the Rugby World Cup. It's about time those legal bruises that are around the International Rugby Board and the World Cup organisers allow kids to sell sausages within a certain perimeter of these events. You know, what a miserable bunch of people. Those kids idolise All Blacks.
It's
They
true, they do,
idolise
they
the
do,
Australian
they do.
Wallabies. They idolise sport in general, many of them. Give them a break and allow them to actually get out there and have a sausage sizzle instead of threatening them with legal action. These are kids.
So true. Cam, your final word this week is?
My final words on the importance of honouring bets. And so for that, Bomber, I've brought along $200 here for you because we had a couple of bets and I lost those bets.
That's right, you did too.
And you won,
Yes,
so-
yes,
so there's the
finally.
$200.
Oh my God,
But-
actual money. Do I have to give this back
But
afterwards?
yeah, but we
You should give it to CPAG.
also
right, I should.
also had a bet. Nice.
No, we didn't have a bet over this.
And
You said that we had a bet over this.
We had a bet over this, and when you said I'll be putting a response up shortly,
Yep,
that
yep.
was tacit acceptance of the bet
Yeah,
conditions.
and Lynn did, and he completely slapped down.
Oh, no,
slapped down the argument.
unfortunately, an aged barefoot
Oh,
old hippie repeating the shibboleths of the Labour Party
Yep.
about polling, it does
Yep.
not constitute evidence.
Well, it
and so look, Martin, I've produced for you an NRA membership card with your name on it.
What? No, what? No, no.
And you
no,
need
don't put this
you,
on screen.
You need
This
to
is a terrible, terrible
you need
thing.
to sign up to the NRA. You lost that
okay.
convincingly.
No, no. Yes, okay. Thank you, Sal, and thank you, Cam. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. So Paula Bennett wants urgent action on vulnerable children, does she? Then why the bloody hell has she waited almost 3 years to launch a 32-page green paper that does very little to actually help the almost 20% of New Zealand children who live in poverty? At this rate, her department are writing 1 page for every month National are in office. We know what the issues are. We know how we can make real inroads into poverty reduction when there is genuine political will. $20 million to feed our poorest children so that they can learn will do more for education and poverty reduction in this country than all the Benny bashing bullshit Paula is currently putting on beneficiaries by cutting off their benefits and forcing the mentally unwell and sick back to work when there are no jobs. All Paula is suggesting is cutting the slices of the pie smaller rather than growing a bloody bigger pie. Sadly, this government are as ideologically blind to taxing the rich as the Republican Party in America are. When rich and poor stood shoulder to shoulder and fought on the battlefields that gained New Zealand its honour, they decided that those who shared the burden of democracy should equally share in its fruits. Our redistributive tax system is the backbone to our egalitarianism. Paula Bennett's Green Paper is a pathetic attempt to smother criticisms of her government's inaction over poverty by refusing to answer the most basic question: how can hungry kids learn? If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded new citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching whānau. Good night, Aotearoa. I'm not signing this.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.